This meeting will come to order. Welcome to the our work session tonight. Ms. McLeod, will you lead us in our pledge? Thank you. I think that may be the first time you've led it, isn't it? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll have a moment of silence on Thursday. Okay. Any questions, comments about the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda? We'll move on, I guess, to number 7, Mr. Odom.
Number 7 is our building program, and there's not a motion with it unless you'll see something you want to change. But I kind of want to review what we'll be talking about tomorrow night and what we'll be showing to Health and Ed when we take a look at it. Of course, we have the 5-year, $234 million building program that you've already approved. The change in tonight's will be the cost of the Eagleville property. Any proposals for those that might be watching us on television? We're pretty good at predicting out about 3 years. When we get to years 4 and 5, it certainly becomes more difficult just because it's driven somewhat by development. We believe that this plan addresses 3 essential needs when we take a look at it. We try to anticipate district and geographic area enrollment growth for Rutherford County schools. That's been anywhere from about 1.2% to 5.6% in the last 10 years. We have some high priorities in this program we're looking at for the expansion of Oakland Middle and property for a new middle and elementary school in the Smyrna-Laverne area. We'll look at that in just a moment. As the second essential we continue addressing renovation needs and overcrowded facilities that we have. John Coleman is one of the primary ones that needs significant replacement renovation needs there. I think the Smyrna and Laverne High School football stadiums, the bleachers there, that's crowd safety concerns. We've discussed that sometime. We'll try to discuss that as we go up there with them. Along with, we have overcrowding conditions being addressed this year already at Eagleville. You're working on that project, and of course, we opened up Blackman Middle this year, and they already have over 1,200 students, about 1,225. The 5-year plans does include additions at Roy Waldron, Oakland Middle, Laverne Middle, and Siegel High. One of the things that we told the commission several years ago that where we could add on, we would try to, because it is certainly, when you consider your cost per square foot, that's more economical if we can do that. The third essential is we want to reduce our dependence on portables. And Rutherford County Schools has 146 portables. 143 of those are classrooms, and you'll have a sheet we'll look at in a minute. The 5-year building plan, we have the potential to remove 47 portables in 6 schools, and I know that's one of your priorities, so we want to take a look at that. So if you'll take some of the sheets with me first, we're going to look at some of the documents that we might have. The first one is our current enrollment and growth numbers. If you'll take a look at that, it's the and so to arrive at these numbers, I took the membership that we had about 1 year ago, the 5th month, and compared it actually with January 22nd. Just ran a membership report with our iNow. Our growth for the year is approximately 504 for the same time this year, the same period a year ago, or about 1.2%. Interesting findings, though, in this, if you'll look at the bottom, the real growth in high schools is 3.2%. So that's interesting that high school growth is up. We're actually picking up, I think, more high school students, certainly than we used to. Our Magnet High School now, we have more children returning for high school programs, IB programs at Oakland, career and technical education, your offering of dual credit. We talked about Laverne High School with over 800 credits last year with them dual credit situations, so I think we're having more return. I want specifically the ones that in the yellow in the last column, percent change, draw your attention, which drives some of the reasons that why we have selected some of the schools that's on the 5-year building program. Blackman Middle School has grown 6.1%, from a year ago. Eagleville is up 5.2%. For the last several years, Eagleville has certainly grown. We'll have to make some decisions about how open we can be, and Mr. Evans and I were talking about that some today, about Mr. Tolles having to watch his numbers some there. Rock Springs Elementary School at 4.2% and Rock Springs Middle School at 4.7%. Some of those numbers are being driven especially by the new apartment complexes in Smyrna. Some of those you see up behind Target, that sort of areas. In fact, we've actually seen growth during the year in that. Laverne Primary, which again is nothing but it's pre-K through 1 there, and we got 5.1% growth there. So that says in the younger population, that one is up. Roy Waldron's up 6.1%, which is a high growth rate. And the other ones is at the bottom that we've marked, Stewart's Creek Elementary at 5.6%, Stewart's Creek Middle at 7%. And you've been reading lately about, I think, John Floyd and them are planning to start a development. I think they started with one number, but I think about 147, 148 houses. Development was approved by the Smyrna Building Commission or whatever from there. So there's also another about 400 acres down the road from it there at Stewart's Creek. So when we look at the numbers, when you look at the Rock Springs numbers, you look at the Stewart's Creek's numbers, the site that we're working on and looking at in the Smyrna-Laverne area is to immediately address those needs. Given another couple of years or so, if we have percentage growth like we're seeing here, it's going to be very difficult unless we move on that one relatively quickly. So that's kind of some of our target areas. I think 504, I'll point out a couple of things to you here, because I've mentioned sometimes before, the city opened up the new school this year. If you'll look up at Blackman Elementary, that's, they actually dropped 226 from their 1,103 the year before. We had portables and things there, which is very tight in that one. So we were glad to see that number decline some. And when you look at Brown's Chapel, which covers some of the same zoned area, they lost 54 students. So you add those particular numbers together, you're back 280 or about 300. Had things been the same, that 504 could very easily been close to 804 or something, you see. So that's what we're seeing. So a lot of that's a 1 year pretty much probably adjustment in that. I think some of the other things maybe possibly the lunch, free breakfast and lunch with the city attracted some in the area. So that's kind of where we are driving our building program there for Smyrna Laverne area some and some of the other additions. The second thing I want to take a look is the portable assignments, and you have a sheet that shows the 146 portables. 2 of those are for clinics, the health clinics that the county runs that are at Blackman Elementary, and 1 is a maintenance portable that's at Smyrna, still on the Smyrna primary site for 3. So there's 146 of those being used. If you really consider 15, 20, 25 students per portable, it kind of lets you see how many classrooms we are short very quickly. So we have it broken down for you in single and also double numbers. Interestingly, you may know we each year around the winter break over in December, we ask principals to send us requests for portables the next year based upon what they're seeing from enrollment, that sort of thing. We have requests for 22 portables for next year. We're not going to be able to provide 22 portables at a number of schools, and that's driven very often by what drives that is to accommodate enrollment growth. You saw at Roy Waldron and at John Coleman, they're trying to have small group instructions. That's where you saw people in the hallways and areas that were not very large or designed for instruction to do that. Oakland Middle School still has 4 roving teachers. In other words, teachers do not have a classroom. They move around the building and occupy a classroom as a teacher has their planning period or something like that. So very often principals will request something to try to accommodate those so that teachers can have a classroom to do their setups and all. But we'll go through, Mr. Clardy, Mr. Zago, and myself, and we'll see how many we're actually probably could move. We'll not likely to move to places where we're going to be building or renovating. One real exception to that's probably going to be Rock Springs Middle School. I can tell you right now, because of the growth that they've had this year, even though we're looking at building a new one, school a couple of years down the road, being able to open at Rock Springs to accommodate some of Rock Springs Middle, I think we'll have to go ahead and place some there next year just to get them through the year. So again, if everything in our building programs, the 5-year plans works, we certainly have the potential to eliminate 47 portables, but given growth or some of the numbers that we're seeing, that can certainly change as we accommodate that. As with the third thing that we want to look at is the sheet that you...
Mr. Odom?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hodge?
Just got a question, looking at the portables versus the students. Just curious, you've got Oakland with 1940 and Riverdale with 1859, but you got Riverdale with 13 portables and Oakland 4.
Right.
And they're the same schools. What do we got?
They had that over the years when Oakland dropped down to the 1700s, basically, and Riverdale, before the split and the rezoning some last year with Blackman and all, they were running over 2,000. We did move some last year, and some of the ones we're talking about moving this next year will come from there also. Deaf Ed, the site. Your cost to relocate a portable, we talked about that today, can go up to $15,000 probably, times you pay your moving costs, you have to run your wiring again, you have to build ramps, make it handicap accessible and all to do it. So it's not particularly cheap to relocate portables. But we do that every year, a number of those, and Jeff builds those into his budgets. But you're right, there is some there that we can pull from. We've already identified that.
Oh, they're not using them all. They're just some of them.
They're using them, but they could accommodate in the building. They just have to make some accommodations to do some of the others, what they'd have to do. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do we have a number on vacant? Do we have any vacant portables at all?
I'm not aware of anything.
I was just trying to identify how many we did have available if we could make them available.
We've identified 8 classrooms that will be available next year, and that will be Memorial Working Group. They'll be coming from Eagle.
Eagle was one of the big ones.
Classrooms there, and that space is leased, it allows us to keep those and move into other places.
With 146, are there any that are going to be retired due to age and condition?
There's always that possibility. We have not identified any that are available for leasing at the moment. Because we have a greater need for some of those.
John Coleman, if the commission funds our proposal, will definitely be surplus or also landfill or whatever.
I suspect the landfill, I can't imagine a couple of those even being moved.
I think we did some at Roy Waldron a few years ago, and the people that tried to move them had great difficulty, I think, doing that best I can remember. It just,
Are all these, I guess another question, all these you got at Riverdale, are all of them in fairly good shape?
probably better than some of the others.
They would probably stand another move, most of them would, but there's a few of them that are getting on the back side of their useful life.
Any questions on that? Let's look at your building program then. At your large sheet, which is the multicolored, and this is basically, this is version G, but this is the version that we have with the adjustment in the cost for the property for the Eagleville field. The 64,000 that we have up there at this time. So that's the change. The rest of it is the same thing that you saw back when you originally approved it, which was 12, 11, and 14. So that sheet's the same. What we thought we would do, there's one other sheet that we put with it, that we thought it would help maybe as we go to health and ed, the second sheet to pull out what we need for this year, to look at that $57,394,000. That's the short sheet. And basically it's taking the blue coded blocks and pulling out what we need for that. And so the $57,394,000, the land for the Eagleville practice field, which we absolutely need to do. It's a priority for me that the $19 million for John Coleman needs to be done. The land area for the middle and elementary school in Smyrna, we're doing geotechnical testing on that land currently. Again, you'd hate to have a situation if you don't go ahead and borrow the money to purchase that this is next to some developments. It has access readily to gas, water, sewer. You'd hate to lose that and be having to go another direction. So we hope the commission will see fit to go ahead and let us buy that land if geotechnical testing proves okay for that. You toured Roy Waldron along with us and some commissioners and the mayor. That's the addition to accommodate some of that growth. When you look at Laverne Lake's numbers, one of the things that I learned, did take the tour that Commissioner Cook designed the other Saturday, and one of the things that we're seeing in basically out in the Lake Estates,
Lake Road,
Lake.
McFarland Point.
When we look at that, one of the things that's happening, people are moving back into those. When the economy dropped, a good number of people in that area lost their houses. Lake Forest Estates, which is something like 6,000 homes or something like that.
Yeah.
So they lost those homes, and we still saw some signs up and all, but they were telling us, Mayor Waldron was telling us that they are seeing the return to that. So I think you're going to see some continued growth on that side as people return to some of that housing. And that would have to be absorbed, basically when we look at Laverne Lake, Roy Waldron for the elementary there, and Laverne Middle. You have in your program here also, that's a little bit further out, but we have a concept idea for adding to Laverne Middle School, which is not as large as the Blackman Middle, but it's a concept to add additional rooms for that one. And so that's on there. We have the Laverne High and the Smyrna High bleachers, restrooms, concessions. And of course, you remember the discussion as well as I do, where you have now, like Smyrna, for example, all the visitors have to come over to use the restrooms or get concessions, have to come over and intermingle with the homeschool side. They're under the bleachers there. We don't have that at any of the other newer schools that we've built with the Smyrna and Laverne. They're quite different from that. So certainly we think it's a priority that we need to go ahead, and that $1,800 would be for the restrooms, or $1,800,000 is restrooms and the bleachers, the metal bleachers that we're talking about installing. A little over a year ago, we did put some additional bleachers in to meet ADA requirements because we weren't even compliant with ADA. So we think that that's certainly arguable. The Oakland Middle Annex, again, I think that one is going to be an issue for us because if you look at their enrollment there, again, still over 1,000. You couple that with Siegel, if you go back and look at the enrollment, and you look at Siegel Middle School, you look at Oakland Middle School, that arc that kind of goes from Oakland around to Siegel. The issue is we've either got to add to one of those two schools or we've got to look for another site, somewhere to build a whole new middle school. We think if we can add to Oakland Middle there that we can possibly delay that for a while until it develops a little bit more, maybe in the Walter Hill area and out 231 North in that area. So I think it would be economically wise to look at a way if we can add to Oakland Middle. And then as we look out further, the elementary school in the Smyrna area is really, we're not saying build that just yet, but the property that we're looking at will accommodate both a middle school and an elementary school in the Smyrna area. And when you look at Stewart Creek Elementary's numbers, when you look at Cedar Grove Elementary's numbers, David Urey has portables and their numbers, we absolutely know that we're very close to having to do something there again for elementary schools. And we're getting requests for portables from those schools for even next year and trying to deal with that. So that's our program, and hope they can kind of understand that. But it's $57 million, about $394,000. Any suggestions, comments, or things that you think, do you think this can be understood pretty well by the committee? They certainly have not had the opportunities that you've had. You know, being here, you've watched much of this develop, you've heard it discussed. We're trying to, in a concise way, for the short time that we have with them, to understand where our growth may be and where our needs may be, and try to help them understand how urgent some of this is.
I'm pleased that they received this plan a couple of weeks ago, so they've had the opportunity to ask you or Mr. Clardy or any of the board members if they had questions about it. So I would like to think they were, by tomorrow night, they'll be very familiar with the concept and what we're proposing.
They had not seen the enrollment numbers or the portable counts and that sort of thing, which we'll add to it to help them understand why they've concentrated on just the spreadsheet that basically has the building program.
Along those lines of understanding why, I wonder if we might, before tomorrow night, add some additional color to the school membership page, where when we have really critical situations like 6% growth at Roy Waldron Elementary, and it's tied to a proposal here, if that were a red critical, and then there were more yellow cautious fields, and then we might highlight some green, everything's okay, there at Blackman Elementary, where we saw the overall school, just to make it a little more graphically clear where our criticals are and then where those positives are, because I don't know if we quite express the urgency in
Okay.
the coloration we have.
Sometimes there's trouble with that color, but if we can get a light enough red and that sort of thing, it'll work.
You're not a big fan of pink, is what you're saying?
I just want them to feel the urgency.
Yes, sir.
That when you look at, for example, the Whitworth Buchanan grew 12.9%, but we rezoned last year. So much of that is when you rezoned and moved some from Oakland Middle. If you remember, some of your numbers down from Oakland Middle is that the City Plus, we rezoned some of those students out. So that's why he explains those changes. So some of those numbers that's large are related to your rezoning, and so that's...
The new city elementary, do we know what their population is there?
I do not directly.
Okay. I was just curious.
I know,
Some of that-
I know that they're looking at, if you saw in the paper recently, they're talking about adding on to schools. And Dr. Gilbert did tell me they're also having to look at possibly building another elementary school, although they haven't really selected an area where it might be. When we did one of our drives and rode around and we're looking at it, when we looked at that Veterans Center Parkway and saw the potential there, how many houses could be in that area, and what's happening down the old Salem Highway and all there, I certainly think that's gonna grow very quickly for them, and then we'll have the 7th grade up for that too.
Just kind of wondering out loud what happens to Blackman Elementary next year without a new school opening there in the city, so, but I'm sure, I would
You know-
imagine they have some space.
They'll have, Blackman Elementary could go up or down either way. I did see where part of the area that's closest to Blackman Elementary is actually gonna be the Walmart market now. We were looking kinda on that corner and thinking, gosh, if this turns out to be more apartments and all, it'll make that particular area very close to them grow quickly, but some of that's gonna be consumed with the acreage that's tied to the Walmart market. I think probably there's some 5th grade, or students that were entering 5th grade that probably stayed at Blackman Elementary rather than go somewhere for 1 year. You know, I mean, that's logical when they've been there and gone through maybe kindergarten from there. So I will, unless something develops that we have another major complex or something, I'm not sure Blackman Elementary next year will jump that much. It may stabilize just a little bit more. Here's the Health and Ed chairman. What's
Yeah,
he got to
yeah.
say?
How many years did you sit in that seat?
What's that got to do with the conversation?
Well, I think we're just making reference to your expertise.
Well, it's perhaps non-existent. We'll see. I think I think if the need is clearly shown, I think with I certainly wouldn't predict past health and ed, and really don't want to predict that. But I think. But I think the mayor has been with us and has toured, and I mean, you know, when you see the enrollments that you all really, three of you different have pointed out on this sheet right here, the Smyrna thing is pretty obvious. And when you walk past children in the hallway and they're in intervention and they're sitting out in the hall without even a desk, and teachers doing the best she can, I think those kind of things are pretty obvious. I mean, you know, that we're going to have to do something. And I think, well, we expressed in here, I mean, I would almost be willing to vote at some point, some distant future, that we never buy another portable. But obviously, we can't do that because we might actually have to do it. As bad as I'd hate to vote yes for that, we could be in such a bad situation and we'd have to do it. But I think not just the few months I've been here or the years for some of y'all, but this board has pretty much declared war on portables. And as Mr. Blair refers to them, trailers. And he's right, that's exactly correct. And they're going to fall apart when you take them apart, Mr. Clardy, as you well know. Some of them are, certainly the ones we just went through. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Chairman Allen and Vice Chairman Turner and the others look at our proposal tomorrow night. I've received 2 calls from three commissioners and that have received this in the last few days, and they've had some questions, but I wouldn't want to predict how any person would ever vote, but they seem to be positive comments as to the job that we've done so far.
Now, when you look also at the Smyrna Elementary over there, is 6 portables already. We didn't really account, and the situation there is, do you try to add on to that one again, or are you going to try to rezone some to John Coleman after you do the addition there? I've got the feeling when you put a better facility and all for John Coleman on that side, you're going to see some growth over there. So I think you're going to find yourself, and we actually do own some extra property at Smyrna Elementary, of course, one of the issues, some of that's in floodplain and used for soccer fields by the city of Smyrna and that sort of thing. But when we were looking at 4 to 7 portables here, we weren't counting the 6 at Smyrna Elementary there. I think that's another issue. That's why I say when we get out beyond 2 to 3 years, it gets very, very difficult of what is your highest priority and how do you deal with that?
The difficulty with presenting this is that, yes, we have these classrooms for this number of students, but intervention plays such a huge role in the academic environment of a school day. In like Mr. Jordan was talking about, you know, you walk through the halls and the teachers are working with them without a desk, just sitting in the hall, you know, trying to intervene in that.
You know, it's during that tour that, I tell you what, I'm just amazed, really. Those teachers barely even looked up. I mean, really. I mean, it's just amazing to me with the job that they've done, particularly in some of those portables. Right? I wouldn't last till lunch, first day. You know, I mean, I'm just telling you the way it is. Incidentally, I think the overall Creek School, right at 400, seems like. But the addition that the city talking about making now, I believe, is to Black Fox and again to Hobgood, which they just finished. They just barely got the carpenters out of there. And they're going to add on to that again, evidently. And that zone is directly between Oakland Middle and Buchanan Middle. You know, I mean, and that's evidently where they're expecting growth. You asked me what my comments were. I'm going to cheat and echo what Mr. Young has said and Mr. Hodge both very recently. And that is that I know I've changed seats. I understand that. But it's our job to point out the absolute needs in some kind of priority order for schools. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And I think it's right here, in my opinion.
The city did tell me, I did hear Dr. Gilbert say that the John Pittard on that side, which is continuing to grow, is somewhere in the 900 to 1,000 range too. That one's grown much quicker than they thought, and that's going to be a direct impact on the Siegel Middle and the Oakland Middle situation we have, because it's in that arc we're developing there. So, Osborne Lane, areas like that's growing, developing.
Mr. Odom, I have a question. I mean, on the project list here that we've got, I noticed under the project names down at the bottom that the Oakland Middle School Annex is not on there. Is there a reason for that, why it's not listed?
Basically, it was to purchase the land, and it is pushed out to, if you look at 1 year out, it was not on the first year. The first year is basically, look at the short sheet, the blue column.
Right.
And the pink is the 1 year out, basically.
Okay.
Get the property this year, do that, then as we come back in another year, then you see the funding for that annex, for Oakland Middle.
Okay, but the plan to purchase the land is still
Yes.
there? Okay.
Yes, we need to go ahead and do that. One of the things that we've kind of been told, try to stay somewhere within that 60 million for this year, as we look at that. So, we honestly need the buildings quicker in Smyrna Laverne. We need the Oakland quicker, but we have to work with the commission, and we're part of it too. And so that's what we're looking at, kind of prioritizing in which year.
Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Odom? Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, that'd be a big night. Spotlight on education. I think that'll be interesting with career and technical. And then Mr. Tackett is going to give us kind of a State of the Union address, I guess, on Rutherford County athletics and our activities.
Tyra Pilgrim and was on WGNS today. With Beth from Workforce Development Chamber of Commerce, so they had a very good hour. I got a chance to listen to some of that this morning. People continue to be amazed how many offerings we have, and tomorrow night she's going to share the report card that came out kind of last week to let you see what we have in Rutherford County. You're going to find it very, very interesting.
Yes. All right, number 10.
Number 10 is financial matters. 10A is the amendment. This is general purpose school budget amendments. This amendment makes $7,379 adjustment between the 2014-15 principal and interest payments on the capital lease used to finance our water and plumbing improvements. The amounts for 2015-16 were used in the budget. We'll recommend approval. The motion will be to reduce the principal on capital leases account 82-130-610 by $7,379, and to increase interest on capital leases account 82-230-611 by $7,379 as presented.
Any questions?
For some of our newer board members, between now and the end of the year, there'll be quite a few of these adjustments. Is when you anticipate your budget, you make your budget a year out, and additional funds or expenditures occur, we have to make it balanced by the end of the year. So there'll be almost every month, you'll start seeing more and more amendments as Jeff has to make everything balance. B, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please.
B is this amendment addresses contributions and gifts and related expenditures of $16,172 is being taken from unassigned fund balance and is the remainder of the donation received last spring from the Jennings Jones Foundation. This donation is used for staff development for our Spectrum staff, and the Jennings Jones specified that. That's how it was given. The $32,900 is for grants that have been received for our coordinated school health program, primarily for the walking tracks at schools. The $8,726 is for additional donations made to our charity fund for school clothes, which also receives funding from United Way. We recommend approval. The motion will be to reduce the unassigned fund balance account 39,000 by $16,172 for the donations made to the Spectrum program, to increase donation revenue account 44,570 by $41,626, and to increase the budget for the related expenditures as presented. Again, we're just dealing with auditing or accounting movements.
Any questions? Okay. Okay, number 11.
Number 11 are the new and revised policies that you just worked on first reading, the policy 5.501, complaints and grievances, and this revision deletes the portion of the policy allowing an appeal to the Board of Education. And this was something that was put back in there apparently when we posted it up with TSBA or something, so this is bringing that in line with your current practice actually. The policy 6.600 student records, this revision will incorporate the Tennessee School Board's model policy for student records, and we looked at that at the policy committee meeting. And the recommend approval, the motion to approve the revisions to policy 5.501 and 6.600 on first reading as recommended by the policy committee.
Any questions? Okay. Number 12, that will be a regular agenda item. I attended the insurance meeting with our representatives, Ms. Barnes and Mr. Sandvig, and we'll attempt to attend all insurance meetings each month. If there is no business, Ms. Barnes, they will normally cancel them, correct? If there's not anything, no matter. Okay. Okay. So we will have an insurance update for any work session and board meeting following the regularly scheduled insurance meeting. Did you want Ms. Barnes to do that
If
this
you would like
evening?
to, there was a meeting this week, which the three, Mr. Sandvig, Ms. Barnes, and yourself attended. You want to kind of give them an update? Is it okay tonight? Would you like to kind of hear the
You
update?
actually have in your packet the information that was passed out at the Insurance Committee meeting regarding the Know Your Numbers Wellness Campaign Year 3. One of the things we always want to provide you is information about questions and requirements through the insurance program that affects our employees that they may question and bring to you for some kind of clarification. We want to make sure you're always aware of that. The Know Your Numbers campaign started again 2 years ago. First year, if you recall, we were required to have a blood draw, or they called it a biometric screening. Last year, if you were in the health plan, we did an online health assessment. So for year 3, the employee and the spouse, once again, will be required to do both the biometric screening or the blood draw and the online health assessment. And by doing this, the employee avoids the $30 charge per month over and above their regular insurance premium. So this packet outlines the dates that screening and assessment can be completed. Actually, from January 1st, 2015 through November 30th, 2015, the employee and the spouse can complete the fasting biometric screening, and then the online health assessments will be open for completion from July 1 through November 30th. We'll send out numerous reminders to our employees online and to our principals to try to make sure that people that are employees without computers or that don't routinely check their emails will have that same information to make sure that's completed. Again, both the employee and the spouse must complete both of those options for this year. And this is going on during this school year, but it will be in effect for the 2016 funding period. So if we don't complete those screenings, the surcharge will be added starting in January of 2016. They actually have streamlined this a little bit better so that there is a form that the doctor will fill out. If it's your personal physician or if you go to one of the MedPoint clinics, the form is filled out with the results, and that is then sent directly to Cigna for recording that information. When we did the blood work, the first year it was a little bit mixed up as to how that blood work information would have been sent to Cigna. So they've identified that problem and come up with a better solution.
A couple of other areas that occurred in that meeting talked about the number of workers' compensation claims from county general and for the school district.
That is correct. We always get an overview of financials for the month, a comparison from year to year. And then Dan Good, who is our on-the-job injury coordinator, gives us a report of on-the-job injuries for the month as well, and a summary of the year's reports.
The other part I found interesting was that and I have her card, that she and an assistant, they actually go into the school in the different areas of the county on a coordinated health opportunity.
Correct. Kelly Perrin is the wellness coordinator for the county through the risk management department. And they do visit the schools to try to encourage employees to use the MedPoint clinics, talk about the benefits of the clinics, and answer questions that employees may have about the clinics and those services.
Do they track our accidents or reports and see what kind of recurring incidents we have?
Yes, I'll bring that Thursday night. I did not bring that with me tonight, but I'd be happy to provide that. They do. They track it on a monthly basis and then on a year-to-date basis. Most of them, I will say, are slips, trips, and falls. That's the item that comes up most frequently. Board of Education typically has 8 to 10 injuries, where Rutherford County General has about the same number. So we're about 70% of that population covered under this plan. But the Sheriff's Department, of course, is Rutherford County General, and there are injuries involved there. So it's about an even number of injuries that are reported each month from both groups.
Did I understand that the average cost per injury this year is lower than
I
last
believe
year?
it was. I believe it was. And again, I'll bring that Thursday night. I apologize. I didn't come with that information.
I don't think we really had you set to talk tonight, but you can go ahead and get it out of the way, so. Okay. Any questions for Ms. Barnes? Of course, Mr. Sandvig was there, and he loves answering questions about the insurance meeting, too, so.
For our employees, the biometric screening, the blood draw, basically what that is, if they're insurance carrier with us, you can go to one of those and it's no charge for them to do that blood draw for our employees. So I think most of them know that. I can throw in something else here that's not a part of this directly. I did receive a call from the state health department, and they are finishing some of their contacts with our highest poverty schools, where they will give the students free dental sealant. So a number of students of the high poverty areas do not make it to the dentist too often in that. So it's a great program. I've spoken with all of those principals, and they'll send out the permission slips and that sort of thing, and then the state dental department will come in and apply the sealants to those students' teeth, which is a good, very good service, I think, at school.
And the Tennessee Legislative Network will be a regular agenda item in the future. Mr. Hodge, I think you and Mr. Reed have worked on some correspondence together.
Yes, sir. Most of the board members, I believe, have already looked at it or signed it or whatever. Mr. Blair and I got our heads together, and instead of the 5 or 6 that we discussed earlier, ended up with 3. And I would encourage any board member that if you have anything else, to please forward something to the legislators. Since we last met, not a whole lot's happened on the state level other than the Education Committee of the House. They split that into 2 committees, one being administration and the other instruction, I believe. So,
Yes, sir.
I don't know what the full reasoning behind that's going to be, but I'm sure there's something. And just following some of it, I noticed Senator Gresham on the Senate. It looks like she's backtracking a little bit on the Common Core, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what actually takes place down there. Interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Thank you for the correspondence, and keep it up with the goings-on, because I don't know if it's entertaining, but it sure is interesting.
It'd be entertaining, I'm sure.
Also, any questions for Mr. Hodge, considering the legislature? I'm sure there'll be plenty on down the road as they kick in and the bills start flying.
We actually have 2 of our county legislators are on the Health Education Committee, the administrative one, which is Representative Rick Womack and Representative Dawn White.
Also, a regular agenda item would also be the Federal Relations Network that Mr. Holliday will carry the torch for. Did you have anything tonight?
We'll just finalize that letter Thursday night that we looked at our last work session, and I'll bring that for signatures, and we'll execute that and then carry it on to Senator Alexander. And his committee hearings have begun on reauthorization for the Elementary Secondary Education Act, and things look favorable. His office is working on the Perkins funding for career and technical education, and they are hopeful that that legislation will pass this year as well.
You'll be meeting with the senators and our members of Congress here within the next few days, is that correct?
Tuesday of next week. It remains to be seen whether or not Senator Alexander will be present. Senator Corker, and there's some merit to this. Senator Corker, he follows Senator Alexander's lead on education issues. Senator Alexander follows Senator Corker's lead on things of commerce, because those are the committee specializations that each of them have. So we will only meet with staff for Senator Corker. We're still holding out that Senator Alexander will make a place in his schedule. The House reps, Representative Desjarlais and the others, they have made room in their schedule, so personal meetings with them.
You'll have that Tennessee Tuesday that morning. I assume that you'll have an opportunity to maybe pull at a coattail that morning if possible.
Yes. I will. I'll forward the text of that letter to you. Mr.
Anything else for Mr. Hall? Okay, we're at number 15, general discussion. Anybody have anything for tonight?
Yeah, one thing, if you have time for it, Mr. Zago and I attended an update on the state testing with the new contract that comes in effect next year. We had an uh-oh moment. So, Mr. Zago, would you want to share some of that with them? We're not asking for anything tonight, but it's a knowledge bank for you as we go forward and talk about what can we build in our budget and what we're going to do. So would you share that with them, please?
About knowing about things before it happens, so we try to keep him informed and keep you guys informed as well. You have a piece of paper in your packet that has each school listed, and it has several columns. In one column, it's marked the number of W7, and that means Windows 7 or better or compatible. It looks something like this. Here, it'll have a peach-colored every other line on the end, or a tan. That column there represents the number of Windows 7 better or compatible to our new test assessment formats in each one of our schools. That next column is listed largest grade level, and there's the divided by 2. And the recommendation from the state, in order to meet the 4-week testing window that's being provided for our second assessment next year, our assessments currently are planned to be a little bit different, matter of fact, quite a bit different than this year, where we take TCAP and EOCs at the end of the school year. Next year, we'll begin taking assessments, and it'll be a PBA, what we call performance-based assessment, in February. Usually, it'll probably be around the first week. It'll be all online. Much like our writing assessment, which we use in the school there, it's called MIST, and Measurement Inc. has won the state bid for providing this, and Measurement Inc. owns MIST, and they own another tool very similar to that they're going to use for our assessments. Currently, last year and currently this year, they're supporting technology with XP or better. Next year, they'll no longer support XP technology. Unfortunately for Rutherford County, that's about 80% of our computers. And of that 20%, the majority of them are sitting on teachers' desks, so it's not a very viable option to remove that instructional tool from a teacher's presentation podium, or to be able to relocate it so we use it for testing. It would take such an amount of time to do that, and it still would not be the number. The last numbers we looked at were somewhere around 16,000 computers, and 5,200 of them were Windows 7 or better. So you see the hole that we're doing, and the majority of them are teacher or staff computers, where we've been keeping those. Yes, sir.
Say that again, those numbers.
Roughly.
Okay,
Yeah, I say
roughly.
roughly. I'll put one of those little approximate symbols in front of it, about 16,000 computers in our schools. 5,200 of them are Windows 7 or better, or will meet that. Remember, we have approximately 3,000 teachers, but we also have other staff kiosks or points for staff members to use that, and along with such as, say, 5 computers in a library or things that are not test ready. Of those 16,000, 5,200 are Windows 7 or better. So what my point is, there is the majority of the ones that we have that are Windows 7 or better that will be viable testing devices for us next February. I want to make that point very clear, next February, are not viable for using, or use by students on our tests. We have, and along with Steve Solomon and Gary's staff over there, I sat down with them and we've been very diligent, and we have a current count, and I've got it by lab, but I didn't give you all of that information, not to keep it from you, but just to keep you from seeing more than what that is needed for you to have full understanding, as far as to keep it simple, you know, for us to understand. Of that first column, you'll see it's an elementary school, Barfield. The number of Windows 7's devices that are available in a lab is 27. The number needed is 85. That's 1/2 of their largest tested grade level, which once again is the recommendation. 4-week testing window, we have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that'll be testing in Barfield on those devices. So in order to get all 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students through the online assessment, will take almost that full window to assess them if we have the minimum of 1/2 of the largest grade level available. Holiday, do you have a question? Nope. I saw something that was formulating there.
I have one, but I'm going to wait for you to get.
All right. The difference between what's required as a minimum is 58 computers for that school in itself. We have currently, in the majority of our schools, this is the good news, we have labs that are already wired. There's cabling pulled, there's also networking devices that they're plugged into, so there's not that extra expense for that in a majority of situations. So that we could go in and replace those computers and put the other ones in, image them, and set them up for being assessed. But once again, doing that takes time. So that's why I'm letting you know this up front and early on, that some of this will have to be addressed at some point in order for us to test online. Now, the state is also talking, while I'm telling you this, first of all, do I have any questions about how that works for each school? There's a couple there that might be a little confusing. Some of our larger high schools have several labs, so they'll have 2 lines. The second line is just a lab line in order for it to feed my numbers back to those other 2 columns. You'll see Riverdale, Blackman, a couple of them that have multiple lines. If there's not, the state has said that there's the possibility of a paper pencil test as well. We don't know if the state's going to charge us the difference between an online assessment or not, and we should know that in March. So we'll know more information, and I'll be able to provide that to you pretty quickly. We're being promised that information will be provided in March. As we sit here, they're going away from Explore and Plan assessments and going to an online, a test called Aspire from the ACT company. The current plan or Explore test is $9 a piece. And I'm just saying this for your information so that we can compare it to the possibility of what our regular TCAP test is going to be. The online version is $33. The paper pencil version is $27, which is 3 times higher than our current assessments. The state is reimbursing us for the cost of Explore and Plan, and I would suspect they're going to, I suspect they'll reimburse us for the cost of the online version for Aspire. I do not suspect they'll pay the difference between an online and a paper pencil test, which is $6 a student. That comes into play for TCAP and Explore, or our ELC test, because we tested about 29,000 students last year. Start multiplying that times 6, it starts to be a pretty large number. It comes close to what three teachers would cost for me. The inverse of that is to meet the minimum requirements, there's 2,815 computers required through our 46 schools. We're talking millions of dollars now to meet that. They say they may have a paper pencil test available, and that's for next year. I'm pretty sure they will, but I don't think they'll keep that forever for any student other than probably some of our special needs students. At some point in the near future, we'll have to address this at some point.
One thing about the paper and pencil too, also you need to be aware of, in the 4-week window to try to test everybody. If you choose paper and pencil, you have to test in the first 2 weeks of the 4-week window, which means you lose 2 additional weeks instruction time before students take the test. So this thing is kind of interwoven with lots of issues.
You're only looking at 30 weeks of instruction prior to, not a full 36 like the school year, because we're testing before the end of the year. You start taking 2 weeks out, you've taken 1 out of 15 days of instruction out of that possibility compared to other systems, and that's what we always are. We're compared to all of the other systems around that choose to do this online.
But just like, I think that this basically goes to show it, I think, I don't know if Mr. Jordan or Mr. Holiday one, talked about technology on the tax rate. Prime example, I think, why it would definitely help us out in this particular situation here.
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. Mr. Solomon definitely wanted me to point out the fact that even if we had these computers in January, it would not physically be possible to place them and image them. So we need to be aware of that too. There's a time frame in order to get those computers far enough in advance so that they can be placed and imaged by our staff.
Mr. Clardy.
Network equipment and cabling, it brings it to 2.94 million. So this needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed by the time basically that we get the 15-16 budget in place, so that we'll have time to order those computers in maybe July or in that area, get them all in, get them out to the schools and get them installed by that February, get them imaged. So it'll be a pretty large undertaking. We'll have to take the entire staff and put them on working on those to get them installed and get them imaged and tested and make sure they're working. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Before you say something about dollars, may I ask, bandwidth?
That's a good question, and the bandwidth of that has been addressed through our other grant, but I did not tell you that NAVSTAR specs or what they're using for this. It takes 20 kbs per student bandwidth to do this, for each student that we're simultaneously paying to assess. We can meet that. I've talked to Mr. Solomon about that, and we've quadrupled our bandwidth in order to meet those requirements, and you guys have been very good at providing us those other tools, such as the tool that will monitor what's eating our bandwidth up so that we can continue with instruction. We've just provided that.
Mr. Sanvig?
When we were going through this drill or this discussion last year, at that point, the XP computers, even though they are quite dated, were still going to be allowable for testing. That is why we mentioned it, but we weren't as concerned about that issue immediately as we are becoming.
It wasn't an urgent issue at that time, but now it is.
Yeah.
That was the wow issue that I said when Mr. Segal and I went to
Mr. Hodge?
I just think we need to keep it in perspective, and when we're dealing with this, that this is something we'll be being required to do. We're not doing it just because we want to.
Right.
We're being forced to do it, so somewhere during the frame of way things are running, we've got to get this kind of money. I mean, I don't.
I can hear my friend Doug Schaefer on his feet now talking about unfunded mandates, and he's exactly correct, of course. Again, he's always correct when he says that. He's always right. But if we had this in the budget where it's, Mr. Hodge is right, it's got to be there. And we got the software, and have we got the personnel, and is there enough time to get this ready to go by 6-7 months? This sounds like a Herculean task to me.
I said, what is the latest day that this can be provided? He said early September at the latest, and he said we would have to stop all other cabling, stop all other technology repairs and work on that in order to meet that first week of February, last week of January mandate of the first assessment. You have to remember, every 3 through 11 student will be assessed first week of February, last week of January.
No way we're going to get anything before July, of course. And
Well, that's why I said that if we
Yeah.
try to coordinate this with the new funding year, then that'll give us time to order these, get them in, which is going to be a part of it. And then, once we get them in, it would be nice if we had a little bit of extra time so we didn't have to tie everyone in the department up so that we could address some other needs and the ongoing needs that are daily things to keep the systems up and running. So it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible, and hopefully we can reach some type of solution by, say, the middle of July or so.
I know we're concerned, obviously, about Rutherford County doing what absolutely needs to be done. But as advanced as we are, I mean, there must be some poorer counties and the larger school systems around the state. I mean, they must be panicking. I mean, is Memphis going to handle this?
Millions of dollars for technology hardware. I know Davidson County has addressed this in their last couple of years, as well as in funding multiple millions of dollars. Murfreesboro City put in over $2 million.
They had $5 million
$5 million.
for their 8,000 students, and we took, the $2 million we spent was the grant from the state. It wasn't the local. It was for our 40, at that time, about 41,000 students, so.
As well, last year, we've been seeing this happening, but once again, Mr. Sandvik said we were staying just in front of it until they stopped supporting the XP computers. And I know how stingy you guys are. You'll ask me, do we have any computers running XP that we could upgrade that'll run Windows 7s? In order to upgrade them, it would take enough RAM and the changes in that it would cost us as much as getting another computer. It would be virtually the same thing. That would even make that upgrade.
For me to be clear about this, so just for the minimum effect, we're going to need 2,815 units along with some programming opportunity too, or no?
We won't need software. Our software is already addressed. The testing software will be provided by the state, by Measurement Incorporated. It's just that there's a few additional places that have cabling and some networking on top of this, and it's all hardware that's needed. But, Chairman, I want to reiterate one fact. This is as of Wednesday of last week. If we increase students, you're going to have to remember there's an increased number there. And I did point out to Mr. Odom that in the compiling of this, we did have 2 little mistakes in it. One was Thurman Francis and one was Eagleville. The recommendations by the State Department is for 1/2 of your largest grade level, and that's the given that you're only testing 4 grade levels or less. For example, our current elementary school will test third, fourth, and fifth grade, so it's 3 grade levels. Our middle schools will test 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 3 grade levels, and our high schools will test, 9th, 10th, 11th. So you're looking at that number of 3 grade levels or a few seniors. But Thurman Francis will have 5 grade levels that they assess, and our Eagleville will have 9 grade levels that they're assessing. So that number will be slightly higher. Looking at Eagleville and where their preparation was, we're not far off from that. We had a 0 number there for them. And we also look at Thurman Francis, and that number will be up a little bit. But honestly, that's going to be a minimal percentage of our growth next year. If we grow by 800 more students, you're going to have a few more computers necessary. But this, I'm giving you facts as of Wednesday of last week.
So we'll have a dollar amount at some point in time.
Calculated the dollar amount for that, and we were $180,000 short of what the spotlight on was done last year, which was 2.3 million. It's 2.222. Yeah, 2.2 million and a little bit. It was $180,000 short of that recommendation.
That's for the computers only.
Yes, sir.
That is a wow moment.
But that's what we need, are the computers only, because we've taken care of the software need, we've taken care of the cabling need, we've taken care of the bandwidth need in preparation for this.
There's a few labs that'll have to be cabled in a few of our schools that we haven't been as proactive in.
Okay. But that's a minority, a minimal amount. Okay, then we've got to highlight that a neighboring system, embedded system, Murfreesboro City, has $5 million to test not 3 through 11, only 3 through 6, 8,000 students, and it's a $5 million price tag. We are planning, preparing, and being incredible stewards of the taxpayers' money. We've got it down to $2.3 million. Well, we got to have it. 3 to 11, third grade to 11th grade, testing 41,500 students, and we've already been judicious in putting in place all the skeletal system. We just need the devices to plug in. And the way to do it is fully restoring the percentage for maintenance and establishing a percentage for technology. Do we bring that up tomorrow night? Do we start the discussion with Health and Ed?
Let's don't.
No.
No, the reason I asked Mr. Zaga to do this tonight, this is certainly not the last time, but you need to begin thinking about it, and I think you're on the right path, that we need to put in so many cents in the tax rate so that we don't find ourselves in this situation. The future of education is going to be, if you're going to prepare the students to go out into the world and work, it's going to be technology-based. That's just the future. And so we've got to stay ahead of it. And the only way you can is build something just like we did for repairing roofs, that you put some pennies in the tax rate so that you can update all along your technology. And that's so it's just kind of this awareness, I guess, as much tonight, because they really surprised us when they told us XP would no longer work. That was the thing that really changed us.
Yeah.
I'll just add something. Mr. Holliday, I got your point there, but the city, $5 million, that was your figure that you said the city put into that, and really they're not testing 8,000, they're testing like 6. They're not testing those early grades, so I mean that's a lot of money to. 4. This board has always, in the past, and you all are certainly aware of that, when you presented a budget, a final budget figure to the Health and Ed and later the full commission, our joint meeting that we have out here, you always have the part of the budget that I don't know any other way to put it, that you can't do anything about. That we were powerless to do anything about, and I'm guessing, but I'm close. It's like 89% of the budget. There's only about 10.5%, 11% that we have much power. Everything else is it's in insurance rates, or it's in salaries, or it's in, you know, whatever. Well, this figure, whatever it may be, has got to be in that, because Mr. Hodges just said, I mean, we're going to have to do this. We don't really have a choice. It's not really up to us. I would tell them to mail us the paper and we'll take care of it, but that's not going to work. I don't think.
We have, over the last 3 years, submitted for funds in the initial budget phase. And due to the tightness of money and things, we've had to take that out early on just to make the ends meet so we could get the things that keep the system running. And then that 89% or whatever you called it, that we, we had to settle for it, so we had to take it out. So, now, it's, it's time to pay the system.
Mr. Hodges, did you have something?
I was just gonna make one last comment. On the 2815, that's what you project right now, correct? What I'd like to see or encourage, try to maybe look at planning out a little bit further than that, because every time we turn around, we're behind the 8 ball. Playing catch up. I don't know if 100 extra gonna help you, or 200 extra, or whatever. I mean, like I said, every time you turn around, we're always behind. And I'm like Mr. Jordan, I mean, he pretty well took my thoughts a while ago. These small counties, I don't know how in the world they do it.
I don't either.
I don't see how they can do it. And I know you mentioned Memphis and all them with grants, but it's just hard for me to believe these small counties will do it.
And Mr. Adam and Mr. Carter working together to put another lab of Windows 8s, Windows 7, Windows 8 computers in every one of our schools. So that number you see in that Windows, that W7 or better, is actually representing a diligent effort that was made by hardware and Mr. Carter and you guys last year, putting one in every school to be used. So I can't imagine 47 times 46 would be a reduction in every building.
And I will say, Mr. Overman, and then I'll hush, that I do appreciate the heads up now versus
Yes.
Yep.
down the
Yes.
road.
Yep.
I can accept it a whole lot better once you know it.
It was news
I
to us.
appreciate that.
It was news to us.
Yep. We hate surprises most of the time.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else tonight? See you tomorrow night, and then see you Thursday also. So, without any further ado, we stand adjourned.